Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be going over a first iteration of an AI analysis tool that analyzes injuries for patients and also talk a little bit about my AI product philosophy for when we're making AI applications. So let's get into it. First, some backstory. The inspiration for this app came from the fact that I recently kind of pulled my shoulder during jiu-jitsu class, and I was looking all over for answers on YouTube, on the internet, and then I ended up going to ChatGPT, of course, and self-diagnosing there, which was actually pretty helpful. And this gave me an interesting idea. I thought, I'd like an app to take a picture of myself and show GPT too. So that was the mustard seed for this app that I created over the weekend. Let me tell you my reasoning behind it. I think that multimodal has a ton of benefits. One is that it supplements textual data as well. So if a patient is inputting their description of their pain, the image can help the model get more context as to what the patient is talking about and give a more directed answer. The other benefit of multimodal is that users may have a hard time articulating their pain. So if a user knows that I am hurting at this area, but they don't know the name of the area, they can still draw on the diagram and show the model where it hurts. And then there are a few others, as you can see on the side here. I think that the added visual input also acts as kind of a double check for the model to cross-reference between both the text input and the visual input. So now it's not only getting the description of the symptoms and the incident and what the pain is and where it hurts, but it also has a good idea from the image as well. And then a few others. My personal belief is that I think it is a better UX. I think it's nice to kind of give the user the option to have a more intuitive way to describe their pain, because that's kind of how, when you're a kid, when someone's like, where's it hurt? You point to where it hurts because you don't really know where it is. You're not saying, oh, it was my fifth metatarsal on my left foot. You're not doing anything like that. And the last one is that there's more data. So again, if all of the privacy policy stuff is in place for the app and users opt into it, I can say, hey, would you be okay with me using your visual input as training data for a future model to make the model better at recognizing types of injuries? And so overall, I think multimodal just essentially gives the model more than one way to look at the world and more than one way to look at the problem, which I think is better in this case. Maybe it's not better in all cases, but I do think it is better for analyzing pain and injury. And now on to the app. So just going to talk about the app. I'll show you a quick demo, talk a bit about the future improvements I'm going to be making, and then we'll talk about my AI product philosophy. So this is a very simple app right now. It's a minimal pain intake form, essentially. And the way it works is that you draw where it hurts on the diagram that you can see on the right. Then it'll take you further down the flow, and you're going to talk about the symptoms that you have. You're going to describe the incident, and then you're just going to see what the AI suggests for treatment, as well as what it thinks the diagnosis is. And so let's show you the app really quick. Okay, so here we go. PainPoint AI, where does it hurt? New submission. Let's get started. Okay, we're going to draw on the chart here. Let's say, my wrist's been hurting, me and the homies went out on the weekend, and we started flicking that money. And just got some carpal tunnel. I don't know. No, just kidding. We'll think of something. We'll say dull pain, autocorrect, when not moving, and sharp pain when I rotate my wrist. How'd it happen? Let's say, I don't know. I was playing tennis, and I felt something hurt after I served the ball. Just trying to smash that thing. Okay, and here's the review screen. This is just simple, just so we know that we have the right stuff. Okay, cool. So here we go. We have wrist pain, and we have possible diagnoses being wrist sprain, wrist tendonitis, carpal tunnel syndrome, etc. Suggested treatments: resting and applying ice, physical therapy, wrist splint or brace. And so you can see it's still giving, somewhat general suggestions, and so that's probably something to work on in the future to make the AI more specific and try to eke out what the best answer actually is for the patient's injury. Cool, now let's go back to the presentation. Okay, quick, I'm just going to talk about some future improvements. First, obviously, I'm going to have user auth, make users be able to sign up for the app, pain report history, basically just have state in the app as well. So, you don't have these ethereal reports that are just lost once you get rid of that screen. And then I think that retrieval augmented generation would probably be helpful for the model. Like, let's say that it kind of knows what type of injury it is, then it could actually look up some external knowledge resource that has more information on how to treat that certain type of injury or how to better diagnose an injury of this type, like wrist pain. How do I better diagnose that? The other one would be the analysis was a bit general, and also having the user be able to ask maybe follow-up questions post-analysis. So being able to kind of work with that analysis and say, okay, I don't think it's this, but maybe it's this. Could you help me work through that more? So kind of having it be more of a give and take post first pass on the pain analysis. Okay, cool. Now I'm just going to kind of talk about AI tools and products first, and then move into my philosophy for building these kinds of tools and products. And I made some very broad generalizations in this chart, but it's for the sake of the video and also for better understanding for you guys. So on the left, you see specific scope, and then you have catch-all. So in the specific scope category, these are smaller apps that are highly catered to a certain action or a certain use case that works very well, or it should. They're easy to understand because the purpose is very simple and straightforward. Like, let's say it was writing marketing emails for your product and that's all it did, but it did it very well. Then on the other side, you have a catch-all, which may be broader scope. This might be an email CRM AI-powered giga dashboard, which is cool, but it may not be as straightforward as a specific scope product would be. And so I would say that is one of the advantages of a specific scope product, is that there's less to think about from a dev and user perspective because it is such a straightforward product and use case. Whereas the catch-all can be somewhat ambiguous and the user may not know what the purpose is right away. And then finally, I think that it's easier to meet the user's expectations with a specific scope. And the reason I think that this is important is because, in my opinion, one of the biggest reasons that user experiences aren't good is when the expectation does not meet reality. And so imagine, you saw this super cool app on some ad, and then you open the app and it's nothing like the app. That is a poor user experience. And the reason I say that specific scope products are probably easier to deliver on that is because there's less to think about in the actual functionality, that you can spend more time actually building the experience for the user, which I do think matters. And now for catch-all, I'm not saying that it's bad to have a catch-all or like a broader scope thing, but I believe that it's only executed well when there's more resources and a larger team behind it if you want to deliver it on a reasonable timeline. And so for me personally, as a solo dev and someone that only works with a few people at a time right now, I find myself leaning more towards the specific scope category than the catch-all. And now finally, my philosophy. This is just kind of the napkin version of my philosophy for making AI applications. First one is just start simple. Before I even wrote any code, I took the diagram, drew on it manually, and then fed that into ChatGPT with my symptoms and description, and did that over and over and compared that to just text-based input to see if there was actually a bit of a difference, and I thought that there was, so my idea was validated and I continued. And now this next part is kind of more about questions you should ask yourself when you're thinking about starting to build an AI application. So I really think this one is important, like who's it better for, like the expert or the consumer, and I think that flows into the next one where I'm asking how could this help an expert. And so when we're talking about how it can help an expert, I'm going to talk about it in more of an example. So let's say PainPoint AI, this app that I just made, was to go out to every person. And not every person is an expert in sports injury or, any injury of that type and how to diagnose that stuff. And so they may just take the word of the app, even though they shouldn't, because we shouldn't trust the outputs of models because they are prone to hallucination, but that could happen. Versus if an expert were to use it, like say a doctor who used this when the patient was in his office and he opens up the app and he says, okay, can you draw on here where this pain is? And now could you also type your symptoms? Could you also give the description of the incident? And then when the output comes, he can then verify if the model was actually correct, which is just adding an extra layer of safety, that human element, which I think is super important. So I just think that's a good question to ask. Another example might be GitHub Copilot. It's catered towards a specific set of people, like people that code. So if you're not familiar with coding, you may not be able to discern whether the code that it's auto-suggesting or generating for you is good or bad. Whereas if you're already familiar with programming, you'll just say, oh, that looks great, and it's going to help me get my job done faster, boom. And then the final one is AI additive or just lipstick on a pig. And so to me, I think this is kind of on a spectrum because I think every product should have like the base utility, and then you should put lipstick on it. You should put, lipstick on the product to make a better user experience. But if the functionality isn't there, like the product sucks and you're just trying to hide it behind the fact that it's AI powered, I think that's probably the time where you should either try to improve the product or change to a product that you can actually make perform better. And so finally, just make it work, make it right, and make it fast. So for me right now, I think I'm in the make it work phase, and eventually I'll be in the make it right phase, which will be, tying up all the loose ends, and then finally make it fast, which will be improving the user experience to kind of make it more responsive and just an overall better application and more performant. And yeah, so you've seen my first iteration of an app that is going to be used for analyzing pain and injury using GPT Vision and regular GPT. And you also got a little bit of insight into my philosophy for making these types of applications. And so if you like the video, leave a like, drop a comment if you have questions, join the Discord if you're not in the community already, and subscribe if you haven't subscribed. And yeah, until next time, much love and peace, y'all.